to start. We are going to start with the questions from the RTP of the account current chapter. In the previous session, we have just revised the entire concept of the chapter, and now we'll be starting with the question. So let us start account current. We are discussing the RTP, and the question is from May 2018. Let us start, please. Mr. A owed 4,000 on 1st of Jan to Mr. X. So A is owing to Mr. X. As far as X is concerned, Mr. A is our debtor. ठीक है. The following transactions took place between them. It's agreed between the parties. Interest is 10% to be computed on all transactions. ठीक है. 15th of Jan, X has sold goods. ठीक है. 29th of Jan, X has purchased goods. Okay, so it's a case where Mr. X is also selling goods to Mr. A. X is also purchasing goods from Mr. A. So it's a case of payments also to be made and receipts also to be received from the other person. ठीक है. 10th of Feb, A has paid cash, and 13th of March, A has accepted a bill drawn by Mr. X for 1 month. ठीक है. They agree to settle their complete accounts by one single payment on 15th of March. So 15th of March is the date where settlement is to be made, which means any interest that is due from Mr. X will have to be added up to 15th of March because the payment is going to be made on 15th of March. ठीक है. Prepare Mr. A in account current with Mr. X. It is as good as saying it is going to be the books of X and we will have A account. ठीक है. ये अपना हो गया. क्या करना है अपने को? And compute the balance or the amount to be paid. ठीक है. So in the books of X we'll have an A account, and since A is owing money to Mr. X, it is going to be 2 balance brought down. ठीक है. So we'll have which columns? One column for date, one column for particulars, one column for amount, one column for due date, one column for number of days, and one column for product, because the question is silent. So we can solve the question basis product method, which is a comparatively easier method compared to interest method, because interest method के अंदर we will have to compute the interest n number of times for every transaction. So अगर question is silent, always prefer product method because that is convenient and quick. ठीक है. So let us start with the ledger. ठीक है. We will start from the opening balance as usual. So we have opening balance on the 1st of Jan. ठीक है. So 1st of Jan we'll have 2 balance brought down. Amount is 4,000. Now in the case of account current, in the case of opening balances, the opening balance का date is also to be considered in the number of days. So number of days computation कैसा आया होगा? ऐसा आया होगा 31 days of Jan plus 29 days of Feb because it is a leap year, because 2016 is a leap year, and plus 15 days of March because the amount is to be settled on the 15th of March. So we are going to have this account only up to 15th of March. ठीक है. That is as good as saying 75 days, and that is coming year. ठीक है. Product is very simple. Amount into number of days is we will have the product column. ठीक है. First transaction 15th of Jan, X sold goods to Mr. A. So A को अपन ने sell किया है. So A account debit to sales. This is the entry. Amount is year. Number of days is going to be like this: 16 days of Jan plus 29 days of Feb plus 15 days of March. That is as good as saying, is it 60? Yes, 60. तो ये अपना हो गया number of days as well. Product is simple multiplication. Next transaction appears to be 29th of Jan. X bought goods from Mr. A. It's a purchase transaction. So 29th of Jan we will have buy purchases. 29th of Jan we have buy purchases. Amount is here. Number of days computation कैसे आया होगा? 2 days of Jan plus 29 days of Feb plus 15 days of March appears to be 46, and product is normal. ठीक है. Then we have next transaction 10th of Feb. A paid cash to Mr. X. So X account को अपन ने कैश पे किया है. It is X नहीं, A paid cash to X. So X is us. So we are getting cash. So cash account debit to A मतलब buy cash यहाँ पे तुम्हारा आएगा. The amount is here. Number of days is going to be 10th Feb मतलब it is 19 days of Feb plus 15 days of March appears to be 34, and year is 34. ठीक है. ये भी अपना हो गया. Next transaction is 13th of March. Important. A accepted a bill for 1 month from 13th of March. Now if A has accepted, that means X must have drawn. If X has drawn and we are in the books of X, so अपने लिए है bill receivable. The entry for BR is BR account debit to Mr. A. So to A मतलब buy bill receivable, यहाँ पे तुम्हारा आ जाएगा. Now in this case the transaction is given and the duration is given to be 1 month, and the question is has specifically mentioned that ignore the days of grace. So 13th March plus 1 month is 13th of April. Normally we would add 3 days of grace, but यहाँ पे बोला है मत करो, ignore days of grace. So the due date has to be 13th of April itself. Now the period is 15th of March for account current purposes. This date of 13th of April is going beyond the account current का period date of 15th of March. So we have to compute how far is 13th of April from the period date of 15th of March. It is as good as saying 16 days of March plus 13 days of April appears to be 29, and in case of this it is a case of red ink product because the due date is going beyond the period for which account current is prepared. Note that the amount column will go in the normal side as shown here. बराबर, it is only the number of days and the product that is going to be posted on the opposite side here, that is 29 days and 2000 is the amount. So 2000 was the amount here, 29 days it's taken from here, and this is how we have the product on the opposite side because the due date of this transaction is beyond the account current का period date. ठीक है, ये तो अपना ये ट्रांजेक्शन भी हो गया. सो आई कैन सी वी हैव पोस्टेड एवरीथिंग. नाउ वंस वी पोस्ट एवरीथिंग, ऑल वी हैव टू डू इज डू नॉट बैलेंस द अमाउंट कॉलम. नाउ वी हैव टू फर्स्ट बैलेंस द प्रोडक्ट कॉलम. सो बैलेंसिंग फिगर इन द प्रोडक्ट कॉलम अपीयर्स टू बी 4 लाख, किधर गया, 4,02,000 ईयर, बराबर. दिस इज द बैलेंसिंग फिगर ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट कॉलम. सो 4,02,000 इनटू द इंटरेस्ट रेट इनटू 1/365 is what we are supposed to do as described here. And the amount of interest, note, and the amount of interest always goes in the amount column and not the product column. Please do not post the product in the amount column. Post the interest content in the amount column, लेकिन the interest content always goes on the opposite side in the amount column, and once you post the interest content, only then you balance the amount column, and balancing figure appears to be this. This is the amount that Mr. A has to pay Mr. X at the end of 15th of March because the question specified कि they have to settle the account on 15th of March. So the 15th March का balance amount of 2140 includes an interest of 110 as well. Note that the product column will have no entry in the books of accounts. Product column is only done to compute the interest component. It is this amount for which interest is going to be posted in the books of accounts. Interest being credited, the entry is X account debit to interest, that means Mr. X, the जिसके बुक्स में हम लोग है, Mr. X का ये interest income है, it is going to go in the P&L account credit side as by interest. That's one effect. दूसरा effect is nothing but add in the debit balance of Mr. A so that he pays us 2140 at the end of 15th of March. ठीक है, काफ़ी सिंपल क्वेश्चन था. द ओनली थिंग यू गाइज मे सी ऑन द लास्ट डे इज द कंप्यूटेशन ऑफ द इंटरेस्ट एंड हाउ द रेडिंग प्रोडक्ट हैज कम ऑन द अपोजिट साइड, एंड द फैक्ट दैट दीज नंबर ऑफ डेज ओपनिंग बैलेंस का इट इज always taking the 1st Jan also into consideration. Note that अगर 1st of Jan को normal transaction होता like a purchase or a sale or a payment, then in that case number of days would have been 74 because we exclude the 1st of Jan on the assumption that transaction has happened at the end of the day. But in the case of opening balances, it is coming from the previous day, which means the balance was due for the entire day, because of which we take the 1st Jan as well into number of days calculation. ठीक है, very simple question. So question 1 is done as far as accounts RTP is concerned for account current. We will now go to the next question, that is question number 2, and this question is from RTP of November 18. चालू करेंगे. Let us quickly start. From following particulars, prepare account current to be rendered by A to B. So if A is giving the account current to B, it is going to be books of A and we will maintain B account. ठीक है. On 31st December, reckoning interest at 10%. So interest rate is 10%, and A will render the account current to B. ठीक है. So we have transaction July 1 balance owing, that's opening balance owing from B. So B is my debtor, it is books of A. ठीक है. Goods sold, cash received, goods sold, cash received, bill accepted for 3 months. ठीक है. So इसका due date आएगा. All other transactions का due date is going to be the transaction date itself in the absence of any information. Goods bought, goods sold, cash received. ठीक है. So apart from this transaction of a bill, all other due dates are going to be the transaction dates itself. ठीक है. So as usual, we'll prepare B account in the books of A, the same columns as usual. Again the question is silent, so we will solve this question also on the basis of product method. ठीक है. So as usual, we'll have date, particulars, due date, amount, days and product. We have 6 columns as usual, and we will start with the posting. It is B in account current with A. That means it is B account, that is B account, and it is books of A. So I'll just write this down as well. Books of A. ठीक है. So let us start with the transaction. We normally start from the opening balances. Okay, period तुम्हारा क्या है? 31st December. Okay, so the period is up to 31 December of date नहीं बोला है, so we'll assume a non-leap year as usual. ठीक है. Opening balance is July 1 as 2 balance brought down 600, so we have 2 balance brought down 600. Now how do you compute number of days? July में there are 31 days, and since there is opening balance, 1 will also be a part of the July number of days. So it is 31 of July, August, September, October, November and December. Calci पे कर लो, it should come as 184 days as usual, and the product column is simple, number of days into the amount, and we'll get the product. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट ट्रांजैक्शन appears to be a goods sold to B. अगर goods sold to B है, so July 17 is to sales. So we have July 17 and we have 2 sales. Amount is amount तुम्हारा कितना है? 50 रुपया. So ये तुम्हारा पोस्ट हो चुका है. नंबर ऑफ डेज कैसे आएगा? 14 days of July plus August, September, October, November and December appears to be 167. It will be 17 days less because the difference is only this 31 and 14. The gap is 17, so 17 days less than 184. ठीक है. आगे बढ़ेंगे. Then we have cash received from B. So it is cash account debit to B. August 1 to B मतलब by cash मतलब यहाँ पे आएगा. ठीक है. Amount is 650, due date is a transaction date, number of days 152. ये कैसे आया? Transaction date 31, so 1st of August, so 31 days minus 1, that is 30 days of August, September, October, November plus December. 30 is 90 plus 62 is 152, that is 152 year. ठीक है. आगे बढ़ेंगे. Then we have goods sold to be 700, August 19. So August 19 to sales 700. Number of days is going to be as usual 12 days of August, because 31 days of August minus 19, the 12 days of August plus September plus October plus November plus December appears to be 31, 30, 30, 60 and 62, 122, so 140, 134, that is 134 यहाँ पे आ जाएगा. And product is nothing but number of days into amount. तो ये भी अपना हो गया. August 19 transaction is gone. August 19 के बाद we have August 30 goods sold to B 40 rupees. So we have 2 sales. So August 30 2 sales 40 rupees. Number of days is going to be 1 day of August, because 31 days of August minus 30, that is 1 day of August plus September plus October plus November plus December. So 60, 122, 123. So that is 123 days coming year. ठीक है. August 30 भी चला गया. Then we have September 1 cash received. So cash मतलब cash account debit to B मतलब by cash मतलब आएगा credit side पे. ये रहा September 1 by cash. The due date of these transactions are the transaction date itself, because the due date is not mentioned. Number of days is going to be as normal, 30 days of September. So 29 days of September plus October plus November plus December. 31 plus 29 is 60 and 60 120. So 121 कैसे है तुम्हारा? Oh, December is 31 days. मैंने 30 days ले लिया by mistake. 31, that makes it 121 an amount, and your product column is number of days into amount. ठीक है, ये भी अपना हो गया. Then we have bill accepted at 3 months. So September 1 plus 3 months is October, November, December. Add 3 days of grace, that makes it 4th of December. B has accepted, so we have drawn. If we have drawn the entries bill receivable to be मतलब by bill receivable, transaction date September 1, due date December 4. Transaction date September 1, due date December 4, by bill receivable, amount is 250 given in the question. Number of days is from the due date till the end of the period. So due date being December 4, 31 days of December minus 4 days of December is 27 days coming here, and the product is as usual number of days into amount. So ये भी चला गया. Goods brought from B is purchases. Entry is purchase account debit to B मतलब by purchases, तो यहाँ पे तुम्हारा आ गया. Transaction date same, due date is same, amount is 30 rupees, and then number of days is 70. ये 70 कैसे आया? 8 days of October, because October is 8 days नहीं, 9 days of October plus 30 days of November plus 31 days of December, that is 40 plus 30 70, that is coming here as 70. ठीक है. Amount in the product column is nothing but number of days into your amount, that is normal. ये भी चला गया. Then we have cash received from B 80, that is by cash bank. What is the date? Date is 14th of December. So 14 December by cash bank, same date as due date, because any payment or receipt entry will always have the due date as the transaction date itself. And then number of days appears to be 31 minus 14, that is nothing but 17 days. Amount is 80, that is given to us in the question, 80. ठीक है. And your product column will have number of days into amount. So I can see I have posted all transactions as usual. The due date is mentioned, the transaction date is also put in the table, the number of days is also been computed, and the product column has all numbers as amount into number of days. Now as per the protocol, you need to first balance the product column. Balancing figure in the product column appears to be 67090. ये अपना होगा balancing figure. ये interest नहीं है, इसके ऊपर we will compute interest as 67090 into 10% into 1 upon 365, and this should be let us compute 67090 into 10% divided by 365 appears to be 18.38, जो यहाँ पे तुम्हारा आ चुका है 18.38. As I said, this interest will be posted on the opposite side, and the column is going to be the rupees column, because this amount should be included in his closing balance, and closing balance is made of the rupees of the amount column. That is why we post interest on the opposite side in the amount column, and this is interest income because the entry is debtor account debit to interest. So to interest means our income. इसका एंट्री बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स में आएगा व्हेन दिस इज इंक्लूडेड इन द डेबिट साइड. द बैलेंसिंग फिगर ऑफ 68.38 विल इंक्लूड द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ 18.38, एंड दिस अमाउंट इज ड्यू ऑन 31st of March. If payment is made on 31st of March, Mr. B has to pay 68.38 including 18.38 का interest amount, and this is how we solve questions of account current. ठीक है. You'll have to show all these as working notes after or below the ledger. So you will have to show different working notes. तो कैलसी में तुमको अमाउंट मिलेगा, but then you have to show all these working notes. It's a part of the solution. ठीक है. In the next videos we will be having question number 3 and onwards. ठीक है. See you guys. Bye bye. Yes, in this video we'll be solving question number 3 of the RTP of May 2019. So let us get going. Let us start, please. The following are the transactions that took place between G and H in the period of first quarter of 17 to 31st March 18. So October 17 से लेकर 31st March 18, 6 months का अपने को we have to make the account current. ठीक है. 17 के 4 transactions, 18 के 4 transactions. There's opening balance, goods sold, goods sold, goods sold. There is promissory note, cash paid, goods sold, and again goods sold. ठीक है. Draw of account current up to 31st March 18. ठीक है. To be rendered by G to H. So if G is rendering the account current to X, it is going to be books of G and H account. ठीक है. ये अपना हो गया जो अपने को करना है. ठीक है. Interest is 10%. गलत पेंसिल आ चुका है हाथ में. Interest is 10% and interest to be taken up to nearest rupees. ठीक है. So as usual, we'll have the regular 6 columns on debit side and 6 columns on the credit side. That is date, particulars, amount, due date, number of days, and product. They haven't mentioned interest method or product method, so we always prefer the product method. ठीक है. So let us start. Opening balance due to G by H, to G by H. So H has to pay me. That means H is my debtor. Books of G है, मतलब it is 2 balance brought down as usual. यहाँ पे 2 balance brought down. October 1 से लेकर we have to find number of days up to 31st of December. So since opening balance है, we will include the opening balance का date as well. So October plus November plus December plus Jan plus Feb plus March. Feb का 28 days लिया because 2018 appears to be a non-leap year. ये सब addless करने के बाद you will get number of days as 182. Amount is obviously the opening balance given as 3000, and your product column is nothing but amount into number of days. ठीक है. Next transaction is 18th October. I can see the transactions are given in the order of date itself, so we'll go in the same order. Goods sold by G to H. So मेरे लिए अपना sales हो गया. So H account debit to sales. Same transaction date of 18th becomes the due date as well. Due date column has not been mentioned here. है क्या due date column तुम्हारा है किधर? Due date हाँ. तो सेम डेट इज द ड्यू डेट. सेल्स तुम्हारा है अमाउंट, सेल्स अमाउंट इज 2500. नंबर ऑफ डेज कंप्यूटेशन के लिए द 18th अक्टूबर से लेकर नंबर ऑफ डेज इज गोइंग टू बी 13 डेज ऑफ अक्टूबर प्लस नवंबर प्लस दिसंबर प्लस जैन प्लस फेब प्लस मार्च. सो आई कैन सी 18 days minus 182 days, that is 164. कैलसी पे कर लो, ये तुम्हारा अमाउंट आ जाएगा. ठीक है. ये भी चला गया. नेक्स्ट ट्रांजैक्शन डेट अपीयर्स टू बी गुड्स ऑन नवंबर 16. गुड्स सोल्ड बाय H टू G, मतलब अपने लिए ये हो गया परचेजेस. सो इट इज बाय परचेजेस नवंबर 16 4000. So we have buy purchases November 16 4000, and since the invoice is dated November 26, the due date is going to be November 26. किधर गया due date? November 26. And number of days will be from November 26 up to 31st of March. So November 26, so we have 4 days of November plus 31 December plus Jan plus March plus Feb plus March. 31 plus 4 35. Okay, 31 62 plus 28 is 90 and 31 121 plus 4 is 125. So अपना हो गया 125. ठीक है. And product is number of days into amount. ठीक है, ये भी अपना हो गया. Then we have goods sold by H to G. Again the same thing. We have buy purchases. December 7th is a transaction date. ये होगा purchase date. ये हो गया अपना invoice date. The invoice date becomes the due date, and number of days will be from the due date up to the end of period. December 17 is the invoice date, so 14 days of December plus 31 days of Jan plus 28 of Feb plus 31 of March. 35 and 63 94 आना चाहिए. 104 45 हाँ 73 plus 31 is 104. Okay, so 104 आ गया अपना number of days. Amount is given directly and product column is amount into number of days as usual. ठीक है. Next transaction is अपना Jan 3 promissory note given by G to H and it is books of G. So अपने लिए बन जाएगा bills payable. So it is the party account debit, so it will come on the debit side as to bills payable. Jan 3 to bills payable, amount is 5,000 and the due date low battery, okay, due date appears to be 1 month, so it is December नहीं Jan 3 के बाद 3 months का due date, so Feb, March, April, add 3 days of grace, appears to be 6th of April. The period is till 31st of March. That means 6 days are going beyond April. So it's a case of red ink product. Either you can post negative amount here, or you can post 6 on the opposite side as buy red ink product and 30,000 on the opposite side as red ink product. However, the amount of 5,000, ये वाला amount will continue to be on the debit side as usual because it is a transactions amount. ठीक है, ये अपना हो गया. एंड इधर यू कैन पोस्ट ऑन क्रेडिट साइड और डेबिट साइड एज द केसेस. डेबिट साइड करोगे तो नेगेटिव करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, ये भी अपना हो गया. नंबर ऑफ डेज इज -6 और यू कैन पोस्ट ऑन द अपोजिट साइड एज नॉर्मल 6. ठीक है. कैश पेड बाय G to H, सो H अकाउंट डेबिट टू कैश बैंक, H account debit to cash bank. Transaction is 4th of Feb. That itself becomes the due date. That is 28. मतलब 24 days of Feb plus 31 days of March appears to be 55 year. ठीक है. And amount is here and the product is number of days into amount as usual. Next transaction is March 21 goods sold by G to H, so अपना हो गया sales, so H account debit to sales, same date transaction, same date due date, 10 days is 31st of March minus 21 of March, that is 10, and amount column is usual and as the transaction amount, and the product column is transaction amount into number of days. ठीक है. Then we have the last transaction as goods sold by H to G, invoice dated 8th April. एक और उल्टा साइड में तुम्हारा है, so it's a case of purchases. So transaction date 28th March, due date is 8th April, that is 8 days beyond 31st of March, so it's a case of red ink product. Purchase amount will come as usual. You can either post -8 here and the product here, or you can post 8 on the opposite side and 21 on the opposite side as buy red ink product. This is how we have solved question in our classroom के questions. So you can use that method, go on the opposite side, but the amount column will be on the normal side of the transaction. ठीक है. So I think we have posted all the transactions. It is now time to balance the product column first. Balancing figure is this and we compute interest as here 181,600 into 10% into 1/365. यहाँ पे यही चीज़ किया हुआ है. Amount is 50 because the question had mentioned to round it off and the interest will be posted on the opposite side in the amount column, that is here. ठीक है. Once you post the interest amount on the opposite side, only then you can balance the amount column, and balancing figure जो भी आएगा, that is the balance including interest that Mr. G has to recover from Mr. H, because amount is going to be settled on 31st of March with interest and the interest works out to be 50 rupees. That is nothing but इसका एंट्री तुम्हारे बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स में आएगा एज इनकम फॉर मिस्टर जी, बिकॉज उसके बुक्स में क्रेडिट है, मतलब इट इज एन इनकम एंड ही हैज टू रिसीव 5650 ऑन 31st ऑफ मार्च. 5650 includes an interest of ₹50, which means 5600 is towards the principal and 50 is towards the interest due on 31st of March, because he is paying probably beyond the due date as far as net transactions is concerned. ठीक है. ये अपना हो गया क्वेश्चन नंबर 3 फ्रॉम द अकाउंट करंट चैप्टर. बैटरी मेरा वीक है, which means question number 4 and question number 5 will be done in the next video after I charge my iPad. ठीक है. So in the next session we'll be continuing with question number 4 and question number 5. ठीक है. Bye bye. Yes, let us start from where we left. I think in the previous session we have finished off question number 3 and we are left with question number 4 and question number 5. I am seeing that question number 4 is a proper repeat question of question number I think 1 or question number 2. I think question number 1. Amounts were 2230, 1200, 1000 and 2000, and 15th March was the due date. So I think the amounts, the dates, everything is the same. 2230, 1200, 1000, 2000, 15th of March. So everything is the same. So it is a repeat question. So we will not be discussing question number 4, which means we are only left with one more question, as question number 5, and that is what we'll be starting. So question number 5 is what we'll be starting, and it is from RTP of May 2020. So let us start and finish off this question, and this will bring an end to all the RTP questions of account current chapter. Okay, let us start please. On the following particulars in the books of Mr. Perfect, prepare account current by means of product. So now this question has specified it's a product method. That means we will have to follow product method compulsorily. If the question is silent, we have always preferred the product method. But if the question mentions specifically कि आपको interest करना है, then you have to follow interest method because it has been specified. In this case, we will obviously do the product method. ठीक है, sent to him by Mr. Smart. ठीक है, for the quarter ended 31st March. So it is Jan, Feb, March, 3 months for which we will be preparing the account current. Interest is to be charged or allowed at 12% per annum and take 365 days in a year. ठीक है, so interest rate is known, transactions are given, and in the books of Mr. Perfect बोला है. तो books of Perfect, which means we will be maintaining a smart account. ठीक है, details are Jan 1 में opening balance credit, Jan 12 sold goods, Jan 31 sold goods, 15th of Feb cash received, Feb 20 cash received, goods returned on 10th of March, and 25th March को cash received. I don't see any bills drawn or bills accepted, so 2-3 months का duration compute करने का ज़रूरत नहीं है. The transaction date itself becomes the due date, except these 2 dates where the due date has been specifically mentioned. ठीक है, so we will take the given due dates as the due dates for transaction number 2 and 3. All other transactions will have the same date as the transaction date as the due date. ठीक है, so without wasting time, let us start. Opening balance is credit, so it is as good as saying buy balance brought down. ठीक है, amount appears to be 3500. ठीक है, and 90 days का split कैसा है? 90 days is coming as 31 days of Jan. Always include 1st Jan as well as far as opening balances are concerned. Then 28 days of Feb and 31 days of March. 28 days because the question has mentioned take 365 days, and in a year where there are 365 days, Feb will have 28 days, and that is how 90 has been arrived at. Product is nothing but number of days into amount. Next transaction is sold goods due 1st of Feb 30,000. Sold goods to Smart, and it is books of Perfect. So sold goods में आएगा perfect account debit to sales जो आ चुका है. Due date should be the date which is mentioned specifically to be due date. Number of days will be 27 days of Feb because 28 days of Feb minus the first day of Feb plus 31 days of March appears to be 58 जो यहाँ पे आ चुका है. ठीक है, then next is sold goods due 15th of Feb. So 15th of Feb is the due date. एक minute, 15th of Feb is due date, and then we have 2 sales, and number of days is equal to 13 plus 31 appears to be 44. ठीक है, ये भी अपना हो गया. Then we have cash received, so my entry is cash account debit to Smart, and cash to Smart मतलब buy cash यहाँ पे आ चुका है. The date of transaction itself becomes the date of due date. Amount is obviously given 40,000. Number of days will be again the same 44 because 15th of Feb was done here as well. किधर गया? यहाँ पे. ठीक है, next transaction is 20th of Feb, again cash received 7,500. 20th of Feb itself becomes the due date 7,500. Number of days is 8 days of Feb and 31 days of March, that is 39 days जो यहाँ पे आ चुका है. ठीक है, last नहीं second last goods returned by Smart, it is as good as saying sales return, so we'll have buy sales return because the entry sales return debit to Smart. To Smart मतलब buy sales return. Now इसमें थोड़ा controversy है. The due date is mentioned here to be 10th of March. लेकिन if these returns are specifically from any of these sales, then if the question mentions that these returns are out of these particular sales, then we generally यूज द ड्यू डेट एज द सेम ड्यू डेट ऑफ द सेल्स, ताकि नंबर ऑफ डेज तुम्हारा सेम आए. लेकिन ICAI has always used the due date as the date of transaction, so we will also take the due date of the transaction of the sales return and carry and go ahead with the question. Therefore, due date is 21. Number of days is 21. That is as good as saying 31 days of March minus 10 days of March, that is 21 days. But conceptually, I personally feel that number of days should be the same number of days as the sale transaction, because it is a return out of the same sale transaction. So knock off करने के लिए we should take the number of days as the same number of days of the sales. लेकिन this is my personal view. ICAI always takes the due date of the date of the sale return transactions. So आप लोग भी एग्जाम में ऐसे ही करना, the due date should be the date of the sale return transaction. So ये जो अब किया हुआ ICAI ने, आप ऐसे ही फॉलो करो, because that is how ICAI is solving some. So let us be safe. We will follow the same method that ICAI is following. So अपन ये मेथड यूज करेंगे. The date of the transaction itself becomes the date of due date of the sale return to compute the number of days. ठीक है, ये भी अपना हो गया. और क्या बचा? कैश रिसीव्ड. So it is like it will be by cash bank. By cash bank, the day of transaction becomes the day of due date, and amount is the same, and number of days obviously 31 days of March minus 25 days of the transaction. And as per the protocol, we'll first balance the product column. It appears to be this amount, so 396,500 into 12 upon 365 interest compute करने का, and post this interest on the opposite side in the amount column, that is this amount, and then you balance the amount column to get the balancing figure, which comes here. It's a credit balance, that is to balance carried down. And that is the end of question number 5, and that is also the end of all RTP questions from the RTP of account current chapter. ठीक है, in the next session we'll be starting with I think NPO के RTP questions is what we'll be starting, or I will take any other chapter also. Let's see which chapter I'll take. So in the next session we'll be meeting with